If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of 3. Join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth and postnatal recovery, helping you have a wonderful pregnancy and afterbirth experience. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Mama podcast. So today is a super quick episode and it's a bit of a quick tip around afterbirth recovery. So I'm specifically talking about those first 6 weeks after birth, whether or not you've had a vaginal birth or a cesarean birth. And I'm going to chat about horizontal rest after birth, so lying down after birth. We're going to talk about why I recommend this for everyone and how it's going to specifically help your body and its recovery. And then I'm going to go into the particulars. So not only why do this, but how long do we do it? How often do we do it for? So how long do we lie down for? How often do we lie down for? And then we're going to discuss the next steps for recovery. So super short episode, but it's super valuable for anyone who is pregnant, whether or not it's your first pregnancy, second pregnancy. And this is actually something I wish I had done more of and I sort of took for granted and I felt that I couldn't do it. So yeah, stick around. It's a good episode. Before I do dive in, I really would just love to invite you to join us inside Fitness Mama. So reclaiming your pelvic floor core and strength safely is the most effective way to care for your body confidently during and after pregnancy. And all of this is available with Fitness. So if you found you're not exercising as much as you'd like to during pregnancy and after birth, perhaps you're busy or you've lost some motivation or you're not sure how to best be looking after your body. Perhaps you've got pelvic girdle pain and abdominal muscle separation and you're not sure about the best exercises for you. Or you'd like to get back into running after birth and you want the best Kickstarter possible, then Fitness Mama is perfect for you. So join us for these convenient, easy workouts that you can do from the comfort of your home whilst your bubba sleeps, your toddler runs around causing havoc, or at the end of a long day at work. Head to fitnessmama.com and there's a free trial available. And the link is in the show notes. Right, let's get into this episode. Okay, horizontal rest. Why is this important? So during pregnancy, there's a lot of extra weight sitting on top of our pelvic floor muscles. So whether or not you have a vaginal or a cesarean birth, if we think about our pelvic floor muscles like a trampoline sitting at the base of our pelvis, and if you've got a trampoline, let's say you've got one child on the trampoline, there's not going to be too much, bend or bowing in that trampoline. But if you've got 20 kids sitting on top of that trampoline or even 10 kids sitting on top of that trampoline, suddenly there's going to be a lot of extra weight. And that means there's going to be that extra bowing, that extra movement within the trampoline. And the pelvic floor muscles are a bit like this. If we think about pregnancy and by the end of the 9 months, you've got a lot of weight sitting on top of your pelvic floor, not just baby, placenta, all the fluid is kilograms of baby. And so that in itself can cause the pelvic floor muscles to have a bit more stretch and movement. And then if you have a vaginal birth on top of that, your pelvic floor muscles are known to stretch up to 300%. That's 3 times their original length. So that's way more than what any other muscle in the body would stretch. For example, if you had a hamstring strain, it would only stretch, don't quote me on this, but I think it's about 20%. If anyone knows actual stats around that, do send me a message on Instagram at fitnessmama, because I really want to find that research article. But that's what I've heard. It's about 20%. So your hamstring will tear at about 20% its length, whereas pelvic floor muscles, due to hormonal changes, like they're perfectly built for the job of opening up for the baby to come through, and they can stretch up to 300%. So they're amazing and they're really built for the job of childbirth. However, after birth, if we think about our pelvic floor muscles like an elastic band that stretches, we want that natural recoil to occur as much as possible. So if we think of that elastic band on stretch, we want it to spring back as much as possible. And this is where I really do believe horizontal rest helps. So if we're sitting even, we've got the weight of gravity, weight of all our organs, of everything sitting on top of our pelvic floor. But if we can just lie down, suddenly we don't have those gravitational effects sitting on top of that pelvic floor. So if you think about that trampoline, it's like we're deloading, we're taking all the children off the trampoline so that it can recoil back to its normal resting position. So of course everyone's going to be different, and this is really general terms. Like I don't know what sort of birth you've had in your particular situation, so it might be slight variation depending on what's happened in your particular situation. But if we think about horizontal rest, it can really help to deload the pelvic floor. And it's interesting because I've heard that medieval times there was the treatment for pelvic organ prolapse was actually to hang women upside down. So I'm not advocating that at all, but that just goes to show that de-weighting that area and taking the weight off can really help. And I felt this firsthand. So when I was 2 weeks postpartum, I'd had a pretty good birth and I felt really good within myself. Had a strong pregnancy, I'd been doing lots of walking, I'd been doing lots of Pilates. I felt great. So 2 weeks after having a baby, I went for my first longer walk. I went to meet a friend at the local cafe and it was only a 20-minute walk. And I thought, that's easy. For me, that felt like nothing. So off I went for that 20-minute walk. I sat down in a cafe for a couple of hours, had a coffee. I came home with the pram. I went to our local supermarket, bought some bread, bought some milk. Perhaps you've heard this story before. I've told it a lot. But on my way home, so this is about 4 or 5 hours, 3 to 4 hours later, I suddenly felt, I was about just a few hundred meters from home, I suddenly felt a vaginal, it was like this pelvic heaviness. It felt like a ton of bricks sitting on top of my pelvic floor. And it's a symptom of pelvic organ prolapse. And I hadn't had those symptoms at all beforehand. And it's not like I'd been doing hours of walking. I'd walked 20 minutes, sat down for 2 hours, and then walked home again. But by being up against gravity had caused, if we think of that elastic band that's had a lot of stretch and it's been on stretch for 9 months, it allowed that extra stretch to occur and gravity had its way pretty much. So I was lucky in terms of those symptoms didn't last long. I was one of the lucky ones for multiple reasons, but that's not the case for everyone. And that just showed, when I went home and lay down, those symptoms did subside, but I'd pushed my body to its limits. And this is where I do feel that sometimes after a cesarean, some people might recover better in those 6 weeks. And I wonder if it's because they're given instructions from the doctor not to drive. And if you can't drive, I know I wasn't driving, but hear me out. If you can't drive, it means you're given instructions not to lift anything heavier than your baby. And what that means is you're not lifting a pram in and out the car, you're not hauling a capsule in and out the car, you're not out of the house for longer periods, and it's sort of enforced rest. And this is what I wish all women would do, is not lift anything heavier than your baby. So whether or not you've had a vaginal or a cesarean birth, we all have the same recommendations. So in my situation, it was just literally too much time up against gravity. And I've heard this a lot with my members inside Fitness Mama. Well, not so much my members, I have to say, because they're all doing, they've got the program to help them before they get to this situation. But as a physio in the clinic, this is quite a common scenario. So lying down, it helps to deload the pelvic floor, it helps to take the weight of gravity, and it helps with that natural recoil of the pelvic floor. So I highly recommend it. I'm not meaning lying down all day, every day, and I'm not talking about lying down for long periods. I'm talking about a 5-minute lie down in those situations, perhaps after a walk or in the afternoon when you know you've been on your feet a little bit too much. And horizontal, I'm talking about it from a pelvic floor perspective, but horizontal rest can also help in those early days postpartum if you've got a lot of fluid still in your body and you need help. Perhaps you've got swollen ankles. So lying down can help with that fluid distribution. Lying down can help for so many reasons. So short little bursts, a couple of times during the day, can work wonders. And for the first 6 weeks. So that's it. Horizontal rest, I've talked about why it's important. I love talking about that. If there's one thing that you do if you're after birth recovery, maybe 2 or actually 3. But lie down, give yourself that chance to rest for multiple reasons. Get yourself a pelvic floor assessment at that 6-week mark and focus on your postnatal rehab. So whether or not that's inside Fitness Mama or you're talking it through with the guidance of your physio, there's lots of ways and lots of different ways to do postnatal rehab. Fitness Mama is a really cost-effective way. It's a physio talking you through it. So it doesn't matter what you do, but those 3 things, horizontal rest, pelvic floor assessment at 6 weeks, and then invest in your recovery, your postnatal rehab. And you will be streaks ahead of so many women out there who've had a baby. And this is my hope for everyone, that everyone can do just these simple, small things, because I know firsthand and through the hundreds of women that have come through Fitness Mama how much of an impact it can have. So that's it, ladies. Horizontal rest after birth. Send me a DM on Instagram. Let me know what your thoughts are around it. And let me know if you're managing to squeeze in 5-minute bursts here and there. It would be great to hear from you. My Instagram handle is @fitnestmama, FITNESTMAMA. And don't forget, there's a 7-day free trial for anyone to come and check out Fitness Mama, all the physio-created Pilates workouts, yoga workouts, pelvic floor support, resources to really help you get back to doing what you love with a bubba by your side. That's it, ladies. Have a lovely week. We will see you next week for another episode of the Fitness Mama podcast. Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at Fitness Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer, materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. I'll see you soon.